Hi, I'm Jim, and this is Jim's Fix-It Shop. Today we're going to take some more parts off this poor snapper because there's not much left. So I guess let me put the camera on this side of the table so you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, this is what's left to my poor little snapper. We're going to see what it needs. And the only way you can tell is take it apart and check things out. Now, before I do anything, I want to emphasize this again. I've mentioned it several times. This is put together more or less in a box shape. It's bolted together, and it has, structurally, it is very strong. Now, I don't have anything up here. I took off the mower deck, I took off the front end. The rear case is all that's left. If you're standing yours up and you're going to pull this thing apart, I don't suggest taking off both fenders at the same time. If you do, that makes this structural box very weak. And if it doesn't have a good weld on the corners, it could collapse. So if you're taking this apart, either get rid of some of the weight, at least take the mower deck off, or leave one fender on. And when you get this one stripped and cleaned, put it back on before you take the other one off. I really hate to have any of my viewers hurt by this thing falling on you. Now, enough on that. When you take this apart, your wheel flanges are bolted with those tapered head bolts. Not really sure why they use them. It's going to raise a burr on this shaft. What you want to do is take a file and file that burr off both sides of the shaft where that hole is. I even use a pneumatic little angle die grinder with a pad on it. This isn't a sanding wheel. This is one of them, I don't even know what they call them. It's just a fiber pad, and you can actually remove material with this. You'll see sparks flying, so you don't want to push real hard. But I get all the rust off of here. Because when you take this apart and you pull that bushing off of this axle or the other side, you don't want to shave the bushing by any sharp edges left by this hole. These bushings are in remarkable shape. I doubt I'm going to have to replace those. But I do want to open up the differential and the chain case and check out the chains, the bearings, the bushings in there, the sprockets, the gears, everything in there. I want to make sure it's in new shape. Otherwise, I'm going to replace them. So I'm going to take this side off first. The first thing I want to do is just loosen up the boot on one side and take it loose. Now, as I mentioned before, they assemble these things and then they paint them. So chances are this is going to be painted on. You can see where this hose clamp is red. The end of my boot is red. They don't come that way. Okay, I'm going to put some gloves on. I know you guys just love that. Here in Michigan, we finally got cold weather. And the water to my building has froze. And I can't wash up out here, and I hate to go in the house with grease and wash up in the house. Probably not as much as my wife hates it. So we're going to spin some of these things off of here. Hopefully I won't hurt the paint too bad. Now as I put this back together, I'm not going to paint the entire tractor. It's way too good a shape for that. But I think I am going to paint underneath all of the brackets that the factory never painted. I get a lot of questions on this ratchet. I guess I might as well explain that. This is a SK Wayne ratchet, and you can either use it like a ratchet or you can straighten it out and use it like a nut driver. I bought this probably 42 years ago when I worked at Dresser Industries. They owned SK Wayne, and we got a remarkable deal on Wayne tools. We got 50% off list. And list price is what the dealers paid for these tools. So we actually got them cheaper than a dealer could get them, just because they owned them. So when I first started working there, I bought a lot of SK tools. Do they still make this ratchet? I'm not sure. I just got done snow blowing my driveway for all you guys down in Alabama, South Carolina. Hi, Charles. We ride back and forth quite a bit. He's always hollering at me to shut that dang door because I'm letting all the cold air down there. Well, apparently it's shut now because we got hit with a storm. There again, no paint, and a lot of snow. And if you know me, you just know how much I love winter. Now, let's see if we can pull this thing out of here. That is so tight, it don't even want to come out. I think I got it broke loose. Here we go. The big problem with it coming out was the fit on the bearing is still so tight that the end of the shaft, I get the grease off it, you can see it has red paint on it. The red paint all the way around that axle made it just enough oversized that it had a hard time coming out. But it's out of there now. Before I put that back together, I'll buff all that paint off so I don't have a problem with it. Now we want to take this brake line loose, and on that, I don't know where that little bushing went. Oh, there it is. I did notice for some reason, I don't know who put this thing together, but they had a shim in it to take up the side plate, but the shim was between the thrust washer and the hexagon shaft. where it's not supposed to be. Another reason I want to take this thing apart, just to see if it's put together right. This is the thrust washer with the hexagon hole in it in the fingers. The fingers are supposed to snap inside of the hexagon shaft. Then the thrust washer goes on up against, or I should say the spacer goes up against the thrust washer, and that is pinched between this thrust washer and the face, if I can turn you, and it goes up against the face of this bushing. And that bushing's got wear on the face of it, probably from being together wrong. And that's why I had almost an 1/8 of an inch end play or side play on it, because the face of this bushing is wore right down. And I got a big burr sticking out on it. When I take that off, I'll show you what I'm talking about. The bushing's still in good shape. What I might end up doing is taking that to work and machining this off flush again, so it's flat the way it's supposed to be. And I'll just add a couple more nylon spacers to take up the end play like it should have been in the first place. Must be somebody came back from lunch when they were putting that together. Now to get this brake line off, and if you don't want to mess up your adjustment, don't change the top nut. The bottom nut has to come off all the way and hang on the cable. That way you can lift the threaded part of the adjuster out of the bracket and slide the cable through the slot and get it off. The bottom, I have a lot of viewers getting a hold of me and saying my brakes don't work, something fell apart. Well, the chances are it's this goofy little snap ring that they have on this piece of plastic that's supposed to keep that plastic adjuster into the brake arm while you're using the machine. But these things fall off so easy, a lot of guys have problems with them. I guess there ain't much you can do about it, that's just the way it's made. Now we can take this nut off of the back of this bracket that holds the chain case on. Again, the threads are full of paint, so it's probably going to come off hard. Then the chain case should lift right up out of here. Lock washer on there. And there's the chain case. That still works good. Nothing wrong with them. Rubber seals are, they're starting to crack. We'll put that nut back on here. And the boots are full of the Snapper lube, like they should be. This clamp, it had that on there so tight it actually ripped the boot right up, right where the clamp goes around. So I guess I'll have to replace that. I don't want sand getting in there once I get this thing all rebuilt. Boy, you can tell they never got any paint at all on here. That's a shame they put these things together and paint them the way they do. But what can you do? Let's we'll take these boots all the way off, and maybe we'll pop that thing open today and see what it looks like inside. I'll be right back. Okay, we're gonna take this clutch disc assembly off in one piece. Plug your ears. And it looks like this might pop right out of there. Sometimes you... This sure did. Let me go get that. Usually you gotta pry them out with a pair of pliers, but that one come out and shot across the room. And you can tell that I don't edit. The mistakes I make, we all watch them. Let me throw this in the box with the rest of the parts. Now this one, I've had questions on this, and we'll talk about these Belleville washers. Again, this one's in wrong. This one, the bottom one, they have on correct. Basically what these are is a lock washer, and they're cupped shaped the way they are, so if the nut starts to come loose a little, they spring back into their cupped form that they're made, and they keep the nut locked on even though it may have come loose. This bottom one goes on with the cone part up like a bowl. And then you put on your clutch disc assembly. The top one goes on, cupped part down. And they had it on the wrong way. They had it up. And if you put the nut on there, the nut doesn't come in complete contact with the washer, so it's not going to lock the way it's supposed to. I have had a lot of guys ask me about that. How do these washers go on? The bottom one is cupped upwards, the top one is cupped down. And that's pretty much the way all of them are. They use a lot of them washers in this machine for lock washers. Why, I don't know. There are much better lock washers on the market today than these things. These things are old school. They've been around forever. Pretty much no one uses them anymore. Now, will they use them on the new 19s that they're coming out with? I don't know. I ain't got my hands on one to tear it apart yet to let you know. My can cozy is courtesy of Eric. The giveaway is going to be coming up pretty soon, and he likes me to put my Pepsi in here so you can't see that it's Pepsi, but for some reason it doesn't work well on bottles. Must be that's why they call it a can cozy. I don't know. The brake on this one looks really good. Hardly any wear at all on it, so I don't have to worry about that. We might as well really make a mess and crack this baby open and see what it looks like. The snapper lube that is inside of it, I'm going to say, is probably in really good shape because it's still oozing out all over. Okay, might as well crack this baby open and see what it looks like. Might as well take this linkage off of here if I can get this broke loose. Well, they got that tightened up. Hold it from the back side. They do have a hex on the back side of these that takes a 7/16 wrench. Okay, just about got this nut off. Again, it had pain in the thread, so it didn't want to come off very good. Now this particular side that's hooked to the chain case had a large flange nut, is what they call these. And the one that was hooked to the arm off the shifter had a standard nut. Why they did that, I probably ran out of standard nuts. So we'll put it back together the way it came apart. And we'll take the brake off. Now again, this is a newer style that has a spring on it so it doesn't rattle. And this is a self-locking nut, so it's going to come off hard all the way. As you can see, it's how the spring works. Apparently, some people were complaining that they could hear a rattle. How they could hear that over top the engine running, I couldn't, not with my shop ears that I have. So we'll take that apart. Let me slip this back on here. We'll get it up here a little closer. Now the way that spring goes over top this brake arm, as you can see, it's hooked right here, and it's wrapped around the 1/4 inch bolt that's coming through the chain case, and it just hooks around the bottom side of the chain case. If we spin this around, there's a hole right here that the end of that spring is going through. Goes through that hole over the bolt and hooks under the brake arm. And unscrew that out of here. Now the brake arm does not ride on the bolt. They've got a piece of tubing or pipe, whatever you want to call it, through the brake arm that the bolt goes through. That way it acts as a shoulder bolt so that the arm will pivot and not get pinched when you tighten up that bolt. And we'll stick this nut on here and throw that in the bucket. And we'll break some of these loose and see what we got inside of here. What the heck. We're pushing 24 minutes. Maybe we'll put you on pause as I take all these bolts out of here. And you won't have to watch me do it. Okay, we got them out, and yes, I'm old school. I still use a speed wrench. I don't use an impact or a air ratchet on these because you want to be a little bit careful with the threaded part on the bottom side, and I'll show you what them are. I have a lot of guys asking me about these, if they strip out on them, what do we do? It's stripped out. There's no big deal. There's plenty of clearance in this machine. Just put a nut on the back side and you'll be fine. If you can look at this close enough, and if you guys work on these things, you know what they look like. It has a raised area right where the hole is. Now they drill that with a special drill, and they're called a friction drill. This is one that I have here. This is for probably a 3/8 thread, and all that is just a pointed piece of carbide, and this shoulder on here helps form the top side of this where it blows through to make it flat so it's not in the way of a gasket. If you get a chance, Google friction drills and watch the video. These things get cherry red, and they actually melt the hole through the piece of steel, and that's what elongates the back side. And the purpose for that is you have more room for threads than you do just in this thin little piece of sheet metal. And we make a lot of these at work, all different sizes. To pop this apart, you can use a screwdriver if it wants to come apart good. Otherwise, I would use a couple putty knives, because you do not want to distort this at all, or your gasket is not going to seal well for you when you go to put this thing back together. Now this particular style is going to come apart a little more difficult because it has O-rings that's gripping on this shaft, and that's what keeps this from leaking. And these are gripping pretty good. In fact, it doesn't even want to come apart. There we go. I'm finally off of that O-ring. Now this stuff does not look too bad. There's the consistency of this stuff when it's new is kind of like yogurt. It's kind of between oil and grease, and you want it to get spread around in there and lubricate everything. But as you can see, this is already starting to harden up in the bottom. It's not the same consistency as it is up here. This is for Snapper Lube, this is in really good shape. Most of them I've taken apart, it's like concrete. I mean, it's dried right up beyond use. It has no purpose left to it anymore. Now if I can get this O-ring out of this bearing. This is what helps seal on them bearings. If you look close enough, you can see the O-rings on that shaft. And this one has a little spring on the back side of the sprocket. It's what they call a wavy washer. And that is actually a spring that is supposed to put tension and keep the shaft pushed one way. And I've got a call coming in. Just a second. Now when I put this back together, I am going to put 80-90 gear lube in it. And there's some things you have to do before you can do this. I have a lot of people hollering at me, "You're telling people to put the wrong stuff in their machines." that's what I do. If you want to put Snapper lube back in it, please, by all means, do that. I have somewhere around here, okay, somewhere I have these pictures developed, but these are pictures viewers sent me. Now this is typically what your Snapper lube will look like when you tear apart your chain case and your differential. It's just all hardened up. Now, I had a viewer get back with me and say, you know, you're telling people to use the wrong stuff. It's going to leak. Well, I'm sorry, but if you have a leak, it's going to leak anyway, no matter what you put in it. This guy rebuilt his, and he put the Snapper lube in it, and look where it's leaking, right on his brake. And he said, my brakes don't work. If you've got a leak or something on there, that really shot past, that's going to leak, it's going to leak no matter what you put in it. And I don't know where the pictures went. Now, when I put this thing together, the chain case and the differential has a little, what they call a bird mouth right here. Them are supposed to be hammered down so they don't leak. Well, 80-90 gear lube will probably leak out of that hole. I weld them shut. And I weld the one shut on the chain, on the differential cover. This is one that a viewer sent in to me and said, is that supposed to be that big? I said, no, apparently nobody hammered that shut. Now he's going to end up getting sand inside of that differential. That's his differential cover. And there's another picture of it. I told him to hammer that down the best you can. When I get this all apart, I will weld them and put a little more paint back on it. I don't want them leaking. Now I will take this to work tomorrow and clean it all up and get all this goo out of here. And then I'll be able to tell if these roller bearings are any good or if they need to be replaced. They look all right, but if they're worn, once you start cleaning them, they're going to fall out. Then you pretty much know they're shot. You can put them back in if you want to. An easy way to do that is to smear regular grease in there and then put the pins back in place. The grease will hold them there until you get it reassembled. I'm going through all this work. If there's something in there that's in bad shape, it's going to get replaced. Here's some Snapper lube that I took out of a 2012 machine. And you can see the consistency of it. It's pretty runny, but it also coats. And that's what happens inside your chain case and your differential. It throws this stuff around, and when it sticks there, it hardens. And eventually it all hardens up, and it doesn't do anything. I had my Blazer worked on, and when they had to put new wheel bearings in it. When he pulled the pig out, I said, catch some of the 80-90 gear lube, I want to use it. Well, this is 16-year-old gear lube, and you can see how liquidy it is and how good it's thrown around in there, and nothing sticks to the side of the jar. It all runs back down the way it's supposed to. So the choice is yours, whatever you want to put in it. And we'll get this thing cleaned up. Next video will be cracking open the differential, and I'll tell you at that time what I found inside of the chain case after I got it clean. So until next time, don't forget to subscribe. If you like the videos, give me a thumbs up, and we'll see if we can spread them around a little more and get some more viewers. I could really use some more subscribers. So enough on that. I guess that's about it for today. Remember to work safe, have fun, and we'll talk to you soon. So long.